Awesome. All right. Thanks, Corey. And yeah, thanks for having me. Let me just set up my screen. I feel like every time I use PowerPoint, I'm always relearning how it works. But where's everybody dialing in from? I saw Sammy from Austin. What's up? San Francisco, Mike. Yeah, maybe drop in the chat where everyone's coming in from. I'm coming in from, yes, Anna, chilly Boston. It's freezing. It's getting really cold now. I don't know how I feel about it. Okay, NYC, maybe it's getting a little chilly where you guys are too.
Oh yeah.
UK, Denmark, Switzerland. Oh, Ottawa. Oh yeah, Daryl. I can only imagine. And Toronto, Girish, I can only imagine. I guess I can't complain that it's 30 degrees because I think you guys have it a little bit worse than me. Okay, cool. So I'm going to share this window. Okay, Sunnydale, California. Is it sunny today in Sunnydale, California? Sunnyvale, California? I feel like you have to ask that. No, it's raining. Oh, interesting. Okay. It's like a catch 22. Okay, I'm gonna move the chat over here. Corey, if you could sort of help with
Oh yeah,
maybe with like fielding questions.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Don't worry about that. I got it.
Okay, cool. So do you see the PowerPoint slide and just the PowerPoint slide?
No, we see your presenter mode.
Oh no. Okay. Okay, how about now?
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay, great. Had to do a 1-2. Okay, cool. Always tech issues in a tech conversation. But anyways, hey everybody, thank you so much for attending. I see that there's like over 30 people here, so thanks for being able to take time, especially if this is early in the morning for you or afternoon or evening on a very nice Thursday. But today we're going to talk about vibe coding and why it's not enough. And really, how do we build secure AI apps? And I'm going a little bit off script, and I kind of want to keep this really conversational because I did give this talk. It was kind of more like enterprise audience, but we're community, and I'd love to like field questions. I imagine that you're building AI stuff as well. But the one I would say, the one thing that I've been really thinking about is that you go on social media, and if you follow my social media, you kind of see that I talk about this a lot. You go on these feeds and you think that like everyone's building AI and like AI this, AI that, and there's like 50 new tools that get released all the time, right? And a lot of that stuff is a lot of noise. And I've just been trying to going through a process, especially with clients at TechSec Playbook, is like what is the actual practical AI that is necessary and needed to accomplish certain goals? And not everything is an AI solution, right? As I'm sure we all know. But if you actually want to build an AI system, these systems actually can be quite powerful. They can be quite helpful. I'll give you like a very recent great example. Also, if you follow a lot of what I post on social media, I kind of had like I turned 30, so I had of course like my midlife crisis, and I'm like I need something else. So I got really dialed into tennis, and I get lessons from coaches on court. I go to matches, I compete, and I have all these notes in like different places. So I consolidated everything to Notion, and I created basically an agent that can query through all of that, all of these notes from different coaches, different places, and I can talk to my coaches. And that's been like a huge kind of non-tech-y example of like practical AI that actually moves the needle for me because it's hard if you have a lot of meetings and a lot of information, it's hard to aggregate it. So a lot of the motivation for me is like, how do I help give you guys solutions so that you can build real AI, not the AI stuff you're going to see on social media, like real practical examples of AI that helps. And having this like AI coach just like in my pocket, I can start talking to it, insanely valuable for me, super cool. And these are all things that as an engineer, like you could go and do that and it could just be super helpful. So I want to preface that with saying that I'm in the process of building real AI that actually works and helps. And if I could help you guys with any questions that you have today or in the future, you know how to reach me. Okay, really long intro, so let's get into it. So, basically, the motivation for this talk was building. I wanted to take a vibe coded app. So, I used a platform. If you're familiar with bolt.new, that's what I used. And I wanted to see basically how far could I get in building a talk with your documents application. So, I didn't say that like in my actual talk, but that was the platform that I used. It's a very good platform for building like vibe coded stuff, and I use it a lot. So I basically gave it a prompt and I said, I want to be able to talk to my documents. I want to upload PDFs and ask questions about them. So, it went right to work and it was doing all the prompt, analysis, making all the steps. And then it built this UI, which was pretty slick. It sort of had this drag and drop functionality. This is a Next.js application. So familiar with React. Next.js is a TypeScript version of that. Works really great. We love it. I use it for a lot of apps and builds. A lot of other big companies do that as well. So we had that. Then I wanted to see a list of my documents. So I wanted to get a little bit more into database and pagination of information. So it went right to work again. And then you had a list of your documents. So this was sort of getting into that. Okay, you have a document with metadata associated with those documents. And then you're going to have a channel or a chat conversation that's tangentially related to that. So if you've ever done database modeling, I think it's way easier now to do this with AI tools. So if you have Chat, Claude, Perplexity, Llamas, like in Meta, you can use the Llama models. Bedrock, of course, you could just do it in the playground. But I think like now, like being able to create data associations is much easier. So that was this exercise of can a vibe coded platform do that? And it did it like mostly correct. There were a lot of things I needed to change, but it gave me kind of what I needed. Then a list of my most recent conversations. So I want to be able to see real-time chats that I had with my documents. So that's where now we start having chat history. So if you think about, like WhatsApp or Telegram or, iMessage or something like that, you'll have your people that you talk to, but then you'll have series of conversations with those people. So I was trying to do that same type of behavior functionality, but with my documents. Now, login page, authentication, authorization, we all need these things. It added that in there. And I want to have an analytics dashboard. So it went right to work and it made a cool analytics dashboard. And there's really cool things you can build now with a lot of there's even like D3JS. Like there's a lot of really cool frameworks for building like slick, animations, visualizations, charts. So this was super cool. So got that in there. That was great. And then I was like, well, okay, one last question. I want to make a cool landing page, because you think like I want to make, this send this like a million people, right? So it made, a really cool landing page. And I sort of thought at the end of this, like, wow, okay, like this app was vibe coded. It used the platform, but like it's pretty cool. Like I'm digging this. Like if I wanted to deploy, what could go wrong? And you find out that there's a lot of problems to a system like this if you don't know the code. And the analogy that I always use, because my first mentor, when I was learning how to code, taught me this, was that and this goes back to before the LLM times, right? So this was Stack Overflow. So if you just pull code and copy pasta from Stack Overflow, and you don't know how that code works, you're on the hook for all of it. So if something breaks down, if there's a bug, if there's a security vulnerability, and you don't know what that code did, you could be introducing a lot of problems. So that was exactly what ended up happening. I took this vibe coded platform and then I just sort of tried to run it through the ringer to see, are there real problems with something like this? And there are insecure vulnerabilities or insecure dependencies that cause vulnerabilities, which I'll show you in a moment. But this is not protected against DDoS attacks. This does not protect against spam and rate limits. If you have someone that's, trying to like take down a system, you have no protections around that. RBAC and granular permissions, this kind of assume that like only one type of user would log in, but beyond that, not very much. In the sense of file malware upload scanning, if you were to upload malware, is that going to infect the system? There's no way for us to know if that was incorporated or not, right? So there's a lot of this gray area where, hey, the code looks cool, like this platform looks awesome, but there's problems. And then, of course, denial of wallet, prevention mechanism. We're going to learn about that. Logging gaps, there might be no observability at all. Authentication, authorization enforcement. Again, kind of going back to RBAC, we have no understanding of that. And zero trust architecture, 100% no. So there's all these problems that will come up with a vibe coded platform if you didn't build it yourself. Okay, I see. Someone in the chat said that's where vibe coding walks on the stage. Yes, yes, and then gets exposed for all the problems with it. Um,
Hey,
and then
Hey, Brian, we have a question from
yeah.
Mark. What was the name of this tool you used to build this app?
Oh, sure. Yeah, thanks, Mark, for your question. I use bolt.new. So if you're familiar with the team that built StackBlitz, they did sort of this vibe coding platform that they built out called bolt.new. So I actually do use it quite a lot. It's very, very helpful. Not for like productionized workloads, but if you wanted to iterate on an MVP for a front end, it's very helpful. So I've used that a lot. Yep. Yeah, the link that Jacob just put in. That's the link. But yes. Oh, and then I saw Andrew. Yeah, Kiro, make my vibe coded app ready for prime time. I do use Kiro a lot actually. I did. So actually I could talk about this. So so I actually did use Kiro for fixing a lot of this stuff. Because I did have like early access to it. So I did actually use because I wanted to test like can you use AI like IDEs to fix problems from a vibe coded platform, and you can. So I'll kind of get into that, but yeah, I couldn't like talk about it at the time. But this is like a good case study of hey, there's this code that I have, and maybe an engineering team built it, maybe somebody else built it, I don't know. But being able to productionize it, Kiro can be invaluable for something like that. So, the $1 million question that we have to ask is, are we prepared for 1 million users? And I get excited about development. If anyone has followed my journey, I was completely self-taught. The AWS Community Builders program was actually what helped me become a software engineer. So super grateful for the program. Yeah, anyone that knows like my whole story knows that like I legitimately did not know anything like going into this whole tech industry. So it took a lot of sleepless nights, many years of learning, building, breaking code. But the whole goal that I was excited about was like I want to work on a workload where I could be able to ship to millions of people. Knowing what I know now, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. But that's like what gets me excited is like the idea that you could build software, start with one line of code, and then you could scale something to millions of people. So that's kind of where I want you to get inspired about like yes, there's these vibe coded platforms that will do certain parts of it, but you're gonna need to do a lot more work to get it to the million user level. So that's kind of where I hope this talk helps preface that of like forget the marketing speak. You're going to be able to build million user applications with a lot of really strong fundamentals, and then you'll get there. So my name is Brian Hough. I am a AWS Dev Tools Hero. I was formerly an AWS Community Builder, so mad love to the Community Builders program. I am a full stack software engineer, and the company that I built, Tech Stack Playbook, was really started from me learning how to code 5 years ago. So over that time, I did a lot of hackathons. I basically broke a lot of code and built some things that worked. And that's kind of how I got to where I am. And I know a lot of you through the Community Builders program. So I was gonna say thanks for coming. If I know you, thank you for coming. And if we're new, really great to meet you. So today we're gonna talk about first we're gonna enter the vibe coding era. We need to accept the fact that code is going to be built with AI. I know a lot of people. Some people feel like, oh, I'm not going to use AI or like I don't need it. Trust me, you do. To some degree, shape, or form. Do you need a vibe coded platform to build your whole applications? Maybe not. But you will need AI because the pace of the industry is just moving way too fast. And I use AI for learning. I use AI for development. I use AI for so many things. Um, Even like writing emails sometimes if I don't know how to phrase something a certain way, right? I'm sure we all do that. So Kiro, Claude Code, like a lot of these types of platforms are just great. Amazon Q Developer, great. Like these types of tools, we want to get familiar with them and know how to use them so that we can keep up in the industry as it moves super fast. Then I'm going to introduce a concept for you all called shift development left. When I was at Reinforce the first time a couple of years ago, there was this concept or this paradigm. that was new to me was shifting security left. So we're going to talk about shifting development left, which is like kind of thinking a little bit bigger and not just security specific. Then we're going to build a real GenAI app. I'll show you the code at the end. There'll be a QR code to GitHub, so you'll be able to get all the code. So you don't need to worry. You don't need to like write down all the lines of code. You'll get it. Don't worry. But we're going to walk through how to build a GenAI app, and then I'll help you build a playbook so that you'll be able to build your own apps for production. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to enter the vibe coding era. Now, what does vibe coding actually mean? So it can mean rapidly building software with zero-shot prompts. So that's like I want to build an app that can talk with my documents, kind of like what I showed you before. Using modern tools and technologies. Some of that could be in the CLI. Some of that could be in a code editor. Some of that could be on the web on a platform. And there's going to be, minimal upfront planning. But now with spec-driven development, what you can do is that you can kind of mix AI engineering and vibe coding. So like with Hero, for example, you can do a lot of planning to help you build features. But like the idea of vibe coding is kind of you're just YOLO moding and you're kind of just like, hey, do this thing and then have it do it. And then basically no code, low code platforms, kind of like what I talked about with Bolt. That's what you do. So you basically prompt and deploy recursively until you get the outcome. And kind of similar to like a casino, you kind of just like put coins in, like tokens in, and then you hope for the best and you basically prompt and pray your way to your application being done or in a done state. Now, what are the ways in which you could vibe code? So invisible infrastructure, I don't want to think about servers, environments, or deployments. Generative coding tools, I want the AI to write the hard stuff for me. Plug and play backends, and maybe you just need a specific component, so maybe auth or data or functions. But you don't want to build, all of them because that could take time. And then the no code, low code builders. So I just want to drag, drop, and publish my idea to the web. How do I do that? So the vibe coding platform or pipeline basically is prompt to deploy. Now, if you want to shift development left, there's going to be a lot of things that you want to do. It might start off as a prompt, but you don't want it to end at the prompt. You're going to do code scanning, make sure that everything is secure and viable. You'll then go and build it. You'll automate that with a CI/CD pipeline using infrastructure as code, most likely. You'll then review that. You'll go through testing, end-to-end tests, all of that good stuff, and then you'll deploy. So if you layer these on top of each other, prompting is trying to do way too many things. And that's where I feel like a lot of the hype around vibe coding becomes very muddied if you actually talk to real engineers, because there's many steps that it will take before you actually are sending something to real users. So that's where, for me, I try to encourage people to think beyond the prompt. Like, yes, the prompt might be the starting point, but we are going to need to actually use real engineering ingenuity to actually get this code ready. Oh, yeah, and I see Jacob code. We're interested in the prompts. Like, yes, but like you go on social media and there's like all this like, here's the 5 prompts that I use to build apps. Like, probably not if they're enterprise ready. There's going to be a lot of engineering that you'll need to know how to do. And that's where AI can help you augment, knowledge or skill gaps, but you'll still need to go through those steps. Okay, so productionizing the vibes. How do we do that? So the high level architecture are going to be these components. And I'm sure you all are familiar with them, but it is important to think about this because authentication is super important for how your users are going to have certain permissions. And let's say that you have data that can be shared amongst users. You want to make sure, like in a group chat, that only the invited people can access something, but people outside of that group couldn't get access to those conversations. Super important. API, super important to think about. File storage, ML ops. A lot of it now is LLM ops. So how do we work with large language models or small language models? So SLMs. It's like LLM, SLM. So thinking also about like scripted, very prescriptive algorithms that can do very specific tasks. Those are things that are going to be super important to think about. Also, hosting and CDN, does this need to go under a firewall? If you're building an internal tool, you really need to think about that. Servers, database, and then a vector database, right? If we want to use AI, like an LLM that can talk to data, the tennis chatbot that I'm working on, That's actually, we're moving from basically just API structure to vector DB. So that's something that I'm like actively working on. And vector databases are really great because that you could do the whole like semantic matching and it would just work with an LLM in a super smooth way. So high level architecture, these are the components that you want to hit. Now, these are our familiar and friendly faces on the AWS side that help us accomplish those high level needs. So Cognito for authentication. You also might use Okta or Auth0 for authentication if you use a third party like that. AppSync, really good for your data API layer. If you want to have streaming, API Gateway can also be very good for that. You could also do streaming with Lambda function as a function URL, but just sharing, there's different APIs for different needs if you need that. You could also do a subscription, but sometimes streaming is a little bit niche for that type of system setup. S3 for your file storage. If you're uploading your documents, that's where they're going to go. Bedrock, that's where you get access to so many different AI models. It's crazy, super valuable. And that's where the ML ops and LLM ops comes into play. CloudFront, that's going to be helping you host and putting your CDN in place. You're going to have ECR for your container when you're containerizing this. And then if you want to deploy this to Kubernetes with EKS, yes, you could use ECS Fargate, but sometimes you'll have there's different trade-offs with Kubernetes where you might want to have like high availability, scale up, scale down, and you just might be able to track that better. So that's where EKS could come in. DynamoDB for database, and then OpenSearch service for your vector database. And yep, I see Jacob in the chat about vibe coding plus Kubernetes. Yeah, once you start getting into the infrastructure as code in the backend, that's where you're gonna really run into issues with vibe coding. They have like a lot of the vibe coding platforms, they're going serverless approach. So like that's cool if you want kind of like your simple MVP setup. But let's say that you have millions of people doing millions of things on your platform, like a minute, you like that app's gonna crash super hard. So that's where you're really gonna need to again bring in that engineering brain of yours to like help take the vibe coded idea and then expand upon it and make it more professional and enterprise ready. So Builder Toolkit, these are basically the series of stack items that I think will supercharge any development. Python for the backend, TypeScript for the front end, GraphQL for that API data layer, Docker for building your container, Kubernetes for deploying and distributing it, and then using CDK as your infrastructure as code framework for building out a lot of the resources. I'm also turning on the light because the sun just went behind a cloud and it's kind of dark. But that's kind of these core tools and technologies. Like if you're looking to upscale and like up level your skills and abilities this year moving forward, these are the technologies that I would highly recommend. They're not the cool ones. You're not going to see marketing about a lot of these, on social media, but the fundamentals are what works. It's kind of like the unsexy, uncool stuff, but this is what underpins a lot of the technology that we use every day. So I was gonna say, just don't get FOMO if you realize like, oh my gosh, there's like 50,000 tools being posted about every day. Like, yes, that's marketing. Focus on this stuff because these are the things that will actually move the needle for you and will help you build like 95% of all tech that you would need to build. So, is my application secure? A really great question. So, we're going to focus on the front end first. And I thought that this was really interesting because when I downloaded the Vibe coded platform, and this isn't partial to the specific one that I use, like you should do this with any technology that's Vibe coded or not. So, if you're familiar with Node, Node has basically you'll do like npm install or npx install, and you'll be able to install packages, kind of like pip install if you're familiar with Python. Node has a similar thing with Node Package Manager. So if you do npm audit off of a Next.js or a React project, that's where you're going to get information about any vulnerabilities or issues. Now, I found that there were 6 vulnerabilities in this app that I downloaded that was vibe coded. If I push this to production and I just said, hey users, like I'm ready to go buy my app, there's one critical problem and one high problem and 4 moderate. Where security people will have a field day is that if they know the platform that you use, they might be able to trace how it was built, and then they could just start attacking at the application layer how they think they could basically mess up your system. Maybe get access to data, um, a whole bunch of problems could possibly pop up. So this is why you need to do this step before you deploy it. Because if you just deployed it, the vibe coding platform is probably not going to tell you that there's these problems. It's going to say, your app's good, let's go. And you need to be that higher level thinking to think like, okay, what am I not testing? So this is just a quick test to just make sure that that is secure, which it is not. So again, the app can work, but that means that a lot of bad stuff could happen if it's deployed. So how do we think about fixing this? So I used Amazon Q to actually find out how to fix a lot of this stuff. And this was actually really cool to see because this, and again, you could use Amazon Q, you could use Cloud Code, you could use Kiro, you could use like any of these different things. But what happened next was actually pretty crazy, and I'm glad that I screenshotted this. So I literally copied the package.json. This is the list of all the dependencies with the version. So it's pinned, and it basically, if you do npm install to install all the packages, it will install them based upon how all of the packages are lined up. So I took this, I threw this file into Amazon Q with the VS Code extension, and I basically gave it and I said, hey, can you analyze this and address the security vulnerabilities? I saw these security vulnerabilities, and this is what npm audit said. So it went to think, and then it updated all of these different packages to the correct version. And if you've ever tried to do this manually, it's very time consuming and it can be kind of annoying. And then sometimes you just need to like restart from the very beginning and then just like reinstall the packages again. So again, it can be super time consuming and super frustrating to do this personally. It just did this and it updated it. So what it took was these 6 vulnerabilities into 0, which and it took like a minute, under a minute. That level of like scanning to then make something ready, very quick win that can actually move the needle for your platform and what you're building. So just think about that of like code scanning, need that in your pipeline regardless. Now, is our infrastructure scalable and ready to build and deploy? We're going to focus on the backend now. So to actually get this set up, I'm going to assume that the vibe coded platform is not going to build the infrastructure that I know we know will work, that we want actually on the cloud. So this is where we're going to start completely from scratch. We're going to say, okay, I have an idea of the data models. I have an idea of the deployment structure. I want to now go and build my stuff. So CDK, super easy way to get started. If you haven't used CDK, it abstracts CloudFormation. I would not recommend building manual CloudFormation unless you have a lot of time on your hands and like writing a lot of code, like a lot of code and testing a lot of things. So highly recommend an infrastructure as code pipeline. Like CDK is awesome. Terraform also is great. Serverless framework can be helpful for certain things, but I feel like CDK or Terraform is what I mainly use. Okay, so CDK init app, and then I chose Python here. We're going to activate the Python virtual environment. This will make sure that when you install packages into your components, or basically into your environment, like you're putting it all in the same spot. Just if you're new to Python, this is just super important just to make sure that you don't install it at your global root for your computer. You install it to the specific repository that you're building it. And then you're going to do pip install, kind of like npm install or npx install. But then you'll have your requirements, and that's where you put all of the requirements for your app. So this is what it looks like. So we got the virtual environment there, the stack definitions there, test framework, app entry point, configuration, metadata, and dependency management. That's where all of that lives. And then helper scripts go here. So it structures everything in a clean kind of package. So I like that. Oh, yes. And then Daryl posted in the chat, use SAM if mostly serverless. Yes, agreed. SAM is really good for serverless type applications and those types of systems.
Brian, apparently, you are the goat for hackathons, and that you're gonna now win the Road to Reinvent, hands down. You're the secret weapon, according to Mike.
Oh, okay. No pressure. Now the pressure's on. I hope that I make you proud. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, if anybody like kind of like me was looking for like a way to get into tech, I actually used hackathons to do that. And I think a lot of companies will be interested in that, like from a hiring perspective, if you've done a lot of hackathons, because it's those quick iterations of being able to take an idea and turn a product out
Might
that I
might
think
I,
will really.
might I say, in particular, AWS would be one of them. So don't ever think that hackathons are a waste of your time. I think that they are becoming like more and more playgrounds and
Yeah.
spaces to be able to show off to not only like fellow builders and developers, but like actual like job recruiters and people that want to be able to get in touch with you with their products and stuff like that.
Oh, 100% Corey. I totally agree. And a lot of recruiters were curious when I was talking to them like many years back. Um, they wanted to know kind of like, well, what have you built? And a great kind of like catch 22 is like, oh, if you haven't worked for a company that you could like showcase stuff to, you might not have anything to actually demo and show. So how do you actually show something if you make a hackathon project? You don't have to win anything. You could just show like, hey, I built this app and it's cool. You know, that's kind of like a great way to just like get into the industry. And it's kind of cool. You have like the developer Riz aura of like building a product in 48 hours to talk about. So we love Riz maxing. Okay, so we're going to take our CDK system. We're going to first bootstrap the environment. We're going to synthesize the CloudFormation template, and then we're going to bootstrap and then deploy it. And oh yeah, and that should be CDK deploy at the end. But when you are deploying, you do need to bootstrap it. Like that is like 100%. You'll run into a lot of issues or blockers if you don't do that. And then synth, that's basically consolidating all of the CloudFormation template stuff together. So super, super important. If you had to do this manually, it would be crazy. So CDK just makes it super simple. Okay. So our users are basically going to be right here. So this is us. We're going to make requests to our app, and the app is going to be connected to a server, and it's in a VPC in the cloud. Great. Now, this is actually what's really going to happen. And this is also not commensurate of everything. This is kind of just a small snippet of things. But the user is going to talk to Elastic Load Balancer. That's going to be in front of your Kubernetes app. The Kubernetes app is also able to talk to the server, but this isn't exposed to the internet. It's exposed just within the VPC, so the app can talk to it. You know, you have your AZs, you've got your private subnets, your public subnets, you got your Kubernetes pods, EC2 instances. All of this stuff is set up by EKS, but you still need to really understand how are users accessing this information. So let's deploy our app. So code, build, and deploy. So what we're going to do is that we're going to git push. We're going to, and I was using, GitHub, you might have this automated with a GitHub action or something like that. There's going to be IAM to then run Docker and then have that build ECR. Now you could do this locally with a Docker file, but if you automated it, it just will be easier and more repeatable. And then when we're building the EKS stack, this took a significant amount of time to build out. So, don't be alarmed if you're building, your basically CDK stacks for resources and it's taking a while. You'll want to make sure that all of this stuff can build correctly. So that's kind of where CDK will prevent deployments of resources if there's an issue, which is good because then it will roll back the deployments and then you won't be billed for certain basically resources that get created if there's an issue. You will just want to make sure that you track the CloudFormation template that actually ends up being deployed, just to make sure if you deploy something, did it actually get deleted? What's still outstanding? What's still live and running versus not? But anyways, that's super important to think about. And then we're going to lock all of this down within a VPC to make sure that, Kubernetes, we're exercising our security first principles. Then the app deployment and load balancer. So that was from that architecture diagram that I shared with you before. There's going to be an IAM role for the cluster auth. We're going to deploy app containers to the EKS cluster. There's going to be a config map with the API and then the Kubernetes config map. And then what we're basically will do is that we'll say CDK deploy EKS stack. This will then create EKS. That will create AZ1, and that will create AZ2. And that will also create our Elastic Load Balancer, which we're going to then have our user requests filter through. Now we're going to need a CDN. I'm sure you all know like CloudFront, or you've heard of CloudFront. And we're going to put that basically the load balancer. If we do this with HTTP by default, you're not going to get access to these benefits. So that's where we can layer in a lot more security Just that will make the application work better. So we're going to make a new stack called CloudFront stack, and this is going to be handling that layer of the pie. So this, when we deploy this, we'll then put CloudFront in front of the load balancer, and then we can incorporate Shield and WAF for additional security related to how users will be using this app. Now, when we want to deploy the server, that's going to be also, we could automate this with Docker and ECR inside of GitHub Actions or automated deployments. But again, you could also run this locally. And just a quick shout out, I am using Poetry here to install basically a lot of these components. I use Poetry for kind of my default basically a project management system. So Poetry is, if for Python framework, it's great for mono repos if you have multiple components and you sort of want them all interrelated. That's why you'll see here with Poetry. I use Poetry for a lot of Python work. So we're going to deploy the EKS server stack. That's going to look very similar to the app stack, right? We're going to now have this for the server. But the key distinction is that the load balancer is connected to this app stack, not the server stack. We want the server stack to be locked down here and not accessible outside of this VPC. So just kind of an important distinction that they're similar, but they're different. The app can call the server, but a user can't make a request directly to the server EKS config. Oh, thanks, Corey, yeah, for posting that in the chat. But highly recommend Poetry for anyone building with Python. Ooh, yes, and UV. Ooh, we're getting some good recommendations. See, this is where like I like conversation. You know, it's not just like me talking the whole time. You know, like we can like have a conversation. That's great. Um, yeah, I'm just catching up on the chat.
A nice little chat initiated by Rolf about using TypeScript.
Mm.
Um, so that was pretty interesting, just because his background is in C and not so much in Python. So that was interesting to provide his perspective.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I'm reading that now. Rolf, I totally agree. I do think that at least for this talk, I was kind of trying to emphasize that, you know, you could do TypeScript and Python. I was trying to like cast a wide net to like appeal to different types of people. But yeah, if you're pretty dialed on TypeScript, you don't need to go the Python approach, just do TypeScript for everything. So TypeScript, you know, for the front end, back end, infrastructure as code. JavaScript is one of those unique languages where you could do a lot of things with different flavors. So like TypeScript versus, you know, JavaScript. Um, so totally agree. Node. So totally agree. Like if you're a TypeScript person, CDK is awesome for just using that. It's great. You could use Python or TypeScript for any of your CDK stuff too. So great shout. Also, Sammy, I don't know if I'll be able to get you running with you in a marathon. Maybe we could do like a 5K and see how I do. But I don't know if I could do a marathon. Maybe half marathon. I'll take you up on maybe half marathon. We'll do a planning. We'll figure it out. But marathon, I'm gonna need to like trade a lot more with you, I think. Um, okay, cool. So, is our users' data actually, yeah. Did we do that? Yeah, okay, cool. Okay. So, is our user data secure? So, logging is auditable and ready to go, right? So, we're going to really need to understand if our data actually is observable, right? We have all this information, we have all these users doing stuff, but we don't actually know if it's, you know, set up. And I'm just going to go back a little bit just so I can kind of show you what I mean by this. Actually, you can kind of see it here. Actually, no, let me go back a little bit just to reemphasize this. Yeah. So when users are making requests to do these types of actions, there's going to be a lot of stuff that happens, right? We don't care necessarily about like every single byte array and like byte level type operation, but we are going to need to track the data that users are doing that, especially if you have companies where their data needs to be, you know, securely monitored and you need to be able to validate who has access to what, or if you trace a user so that they can only access their own lockdown data silo. That's where this becomes super important. So a lot of vibe coding platforms do not support this level. Yeah, let's go back. Sorry a bit. So a lot of vibe coding platforms do not provide this level of observability. You don't want to be on the hook for this after you like vibe code a platform and you're like, it's live. And then let's say you get a lot of users, and then someone comes to you and is like, okay, so how do we check this type of data? And you're gonna be like, what? And they're gonna be like, yeah, we want to be able to know like user level this information and how many requests are they making, all that type of stuff. You don't want to be in that situation. Trust me. So with audit trails, that will help you know who uploaded what and when. And you could use, CloudWatch, CloudTrail, and EventBridge for different components of this lifecycle. But really easy way to just keep data either in Dynamo. You might run into storage issues just with cost with Dynamo, but sometimes Dynamo is just a good way to get started. You could dump it into RDS if you want like that type of database, or you could use one of these tools and just monitor stuff in CloudWatch logs. Really great way to just make sure that you have immutable data and you have lifecycle enforcement so that you can make sure that you have this data. You could also dump it into like a data like S3 and then query. So you could use Glue and Athena and make sure that you can have compliance reports. A lot of good patterns here, but these are things that like you definitely will need to think about, especially if you're working in a highly regulated industry. So visibility across all users. User talks to our app. Our user talks to AppSync. AppSync talks to our database in Dynamo. Then that could be logged in CloudWatch. We could have all of those events viewable in CloudTrail, and we could also use EventBridge to track all of that visibility and have automated systems in place. So, secure containerized RAG with Amazon Bedrock. What does that look like? User talks to the app. And this is what our Talk with Our Documents app will do. Could use Cognito. We're going to get a job back. That user can then make calls through our AppSync API to get access to our data. So that's how we get our chats, our conversations, also our ability to upload files. If we are doing streaming, basically like with a chat conversation, that's where API Gateway would be helpful for that type of streaming. And these are going to be communicating with EKS, which is our app plus server configuration, that whole AZ, mega solution architecture, right? Now, when we talk with our document, we're going to be using Amazon Bedrock, and we're going to be pulling from our vector DB with OpenSearch. So that's what that looks like. So just hold that for a second. This is going to be the main architecture of our system, kind of at a high level. Now, deploying the vector store. This took a while to figure out. But there's a whole bunch of steps. If you go into my code, you'll see sort of, and hopefully this will help you. But you need an OpenSearch collection, you need an encryption policy, network policy, IAM role for Bedrock, data access policy, collection level access policy. You need a lot of these policies for OpenSearch to work. You need that set up first. Then you'll deploy the OpenSearch stack. And then you're going to set up the Bedrock knowledge base. And that's going to set up the knowledge base, S3 data source. You'll reference that from S3. Lambda to start the ingestion job, and then permissions, and then event bridge rule. That's going to help with all of the lifecycle for that. We'll deploy that with CDK deploy. And then when we want to sync Amazon Bedrock with the knowledge base, that's when user uses Cognito, get the job back, go to AppSync. We're going to pull from EKS. That file is going to then get uploaded to S3. That's then going to trigger a bucket action where basically on the uploader right, we're going to use EventBridge, we're going to use Lambda, and then that will then do a data sync to update the vectors in OpenSearch so that you'll be able to have access to that data for our users. Now, the other thing that's super important is user uploads malware free. And this is something that a lot of vibe coding platforms are very silent on. If you have storage, how do you know that those files are actually secure, or are there huge problems? Now, when a user uploads a file, we kind of upload things to the cloud all the time, but what actually happens, right? Like if you tried to upload something that was bad, like what would happen? So if a user uploaded something and it had a virus in it, it had malware, or maybe it was legitimate just malware, it wasn't even just like a PDF with hidden stuff, and it was just uploaded, like what's going to happen? Like how do we know what would happen if that was to occur? If a user and this is also very relevant with social media platforms. If you had a user that uploaded, let's say like there's a space to upload an image, but you don't check the file type. So a user could upload any type of file, and let's say that it's shareable. So let's say that a user uploads malware, something like that, in a like in a social media platform situation. Well, now if a user posts something Now, if other users access that post, and if there's something where like it could download into the browser, well, now all those users are infected. So these are huge problems that can mushroom if you have a platform with an ecosystem. So you really need to think about that of like, could one user affect people? The other thing is that let's say that you had bad data in it. Let's say that you have like a company knowledge base, and let's say there's not even anything malicious. Let's just say that you have used like company has a knowledge base, a shared knowledge base in our system, and a user uploads files that basically are wrong or incorrect, and it references a lot of incorrect facts, and it's wrong. If all of that information is basically bad data, when it gets indexed in the system, the whole company knowledge base might now be incorrect. And then when people ask questions, it could have a ton of problems. So that's where like users wouldn't be infected. They just would be getting, they're trying to talk to the knowledge base and they're going to get incorrect facts, incorrect information, bad data. So really important to think about this of like not necessarily just malware, because I know malware is kind of like a scary thing, but like also just bad data. Bad data can infect a system in a similar way. So you need zero trust in general. So secure file upload pattern, what does that look like? So user will upload a file that could then get a pre-signed URL. You could also get these through EKS as well, not just Lambda. This is just an example. But then you get S3 that's going to go up to the upload bucket. It's going to generate a pre-signed URL that then will be scanned. So you're going to basically be polling to check, and you could use DynamoDB as a database reference point, but you're basically going to have a check of when this file finishes scanning in guard duty. So we're using guard duty malware protection for S3. So that service, if it's safe, that file is going to then go to the production bucket, and it'll be like saved under that user in your file directory that you wish. If it's unsafe, you're going to get a ping about this. It's not going to go into the production bucket. It's going to go to this quarantine bucket. And then we also can log and monitor that as well and get alerts. So this is really important to think about, because these vibe coded platforms and these plug and play backends and all, it's cool tech. But if you have a problem like this, like you need to be able to adjust for it. You need to be able to account for it. And this is, again, this is like not the cool fun. You're not going to see marketing videos about like, wow, secure file upload. It's so amazing. So much fun. But this is the stuff that underpins every system that you upload files to. So any LLM that you talk to, cloud storage, they're doing some shape or form of this. If your application doesn't have this or you can't validate that it's working like this, then you got a problem. So you got to figure that out. So how are you tracking how your users use your features and services? So another thing that you want to think about too is, do users have unfederated access to your services? Okay, that's a lot of words. What does that mean? So if a user could basically just, use, and let's say that you have an AI service in the backend. Let's say that it's like one of the more premium AI models. So it's a little bit pricey, but it's good. It gets you, answers, users like it, all that good stuff, right? Well, now if you don't have rate limits and you don't limit what users can do, you're going to be your users favorite application, so much so that they might start draining your wallet. Because let's say that you give users access to all the AI stuff, right? Now if you're using like all these very new models that have huge context windows, they have all access to all these tools, they do all these lookup stuff, it's amazing, right? Well, if every user starts using your platform, they might throw away their $20 subscription to another platform, or $60 or $100 month subscription, and start using you. And if you don't cost account for use of that, they're just going to drain your wallet and drain your budget. So that's kind of why you want to think about that. So two key solutions: tracking tokens and rate limits. Basically just like one character could be 4 tokens. So just think about that as a comparison. You guys have a function that tracks this and makes sure that you basically keep a record of what users have access to, their level of tokens, that type of thing. Also with rate limits, keep it in a database and just make sure like, hey, as soon as a user makes 4 chats, they can't do the fifth one unless they pay another tier, or maybe that's it for the day, and then they're done, and then they have to go back in 24 hours. These are and basically you could have lifecycle rules that will like basically clear these out after a certain period of time after use. But you just really want to think about that, because if you don't, you will just run up huge costs, and that's something that I've seen basically like destroy projects. is because they don't account for the cost of their systems. They want to release, 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 but if you don't think about the cost, you can only sustain not making money for only such period of time. Okay, and then automating the whole security process. This is what's going to help us like move way faster. So with Amazon Q for automated PR reviews, this was sick. So what you can do is that basically you hook up Amazon Q to your GitHub or Git Actions or Git provider, and what's awesome is that you'll get these basically alerts of, hey, this didn't check out correctly, or I'm reviewing this and there's no code security issues or problems. This is just like a slick integration that I recommend everyone add for their platforms if they're developing apps, backends, whatever. Even if you don't use these notes, it's just helpful for context because sometimes it will find things that you might want to pull into a ticket later. So super helpful, super valuable, very easy to do. Okay, so what does all of this mean? So this production app kind of looks like what we vibe coded before. Not really like that different. However, there's a lot of changes that we made to this. So we can validate all of our security checklist items because we know that this is correct. So that's kind of where like in the beginning we had all of these unknowns, all of these gray areas, all of these basically misnomers. We can now validate that we have zero trust architecture, secure dependencies, and you got to see the file scanning process, right? We have RBAC and auth and authorization enforcement. We know that that's validated. Rate limits and spam because we added functions to track for that. The malware upload scanning for our files. We have a whole system in place to manage that. Denial of wallet prevention mechanisms, logging and gaps observability. We have a lot of these checkpoints. Now, obviously, as you build systems, you'll find more and more security gaps and, bugs and, problems. But these systems in place will help you solve like the 95% of what you should be doing. The last 5%, you'll start needing to get more, intense about your actual code review. But this is the production playbook for how I would think about addressing these problems. So AI powered code reviews, automated code scanning, file upload protection, API protections, rate limits and token tracking, authorization and authentication, data siloed, logging and observability, securitized resource groups. So your IAM policies and roles, make sure that those are locked down, and automated AI and data pipelines. These are 10 things that will help you build production workloads every single time. This is like a repeatable process that hopefully will help you as you start thinking about building these things. So this is the QR code to get access to the code. This is also a link. I will copy this into the chat because I don't think I can directly copy this right now, but I know you could scan it. But yes, so that's on my GitHub. Feel free to check this out. This has the Next.js application. This has the Python Fast API backend server. This also shows how to deploy with CDK and all of those stack scripts and how to set up the automated CI/CD pipelines. So all the code, there's a lot. There's a lot here. So take some time, go through it. I'd love to know what you think. So that was basically this talk that I gave at Reinforce. And thanks everybody for tuning in and listening to this today.
Thanks, Brian. Good stuff.
Thanks, Brian, so much. Really
Thanks,
appreciate
Chris.
it. Is there any questions that I know there's like a lot of, I think what was really fun about this is that like your presentation like inspired like a lot of really great conversation and back and forth in the chat. Oh, I'll asked, would you also be willing to share your slides?
Oh, yes. I don't know if that's on the GitHub, but I will, if not, I will figure out how to upload that.
Okay. Any other questions before we go? Thanks. Daryl shared the link. I will also share it on when I share the recap for the recording. I'll also make sure that I share out that GitHub repo as well. I want to thank everyone today for their time. I want to especially thank Brian. I know Brian's had a busy day, so I want to thank him for taking time to be able to present on this. Just a reminder that this is being recorded and that I will share the recording out on the CB Slack probably later today, but tomorrow at the absolute latest. So Brian, I'll give you your last word and then we'll say goodbye.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, thanks so much, Corey, for having me give this talk. I think yeah, I would just preface this with the pace of the industry is moving super fast. So don't feel overwhelmed and don't feel like, how do I keep up with it? Like a lot of what I've been finding over this past year is just going back to the fundamentals. And I think about this a lot of like, is this boring? Okay, good. If it's boring, I probably need to do this or learn this or figure out how this works because there's a lot of like the glitzy cool stuff. I kind of feel like and I get this too. I don't know if y'all get this way of like moth to a light where I'm like, ooh, this new tool, this new framework, blah blah blah. And there's like all these. There's a lot of noise, and I think there's gonna be like a really strong superpower that we could all use is just like staying dialed in and focused of like the fundamentals. Because the fundamentals is what underpins like the 95% of all tech. So don't get distracted. Don't get FOMO. Don't feel like, oh my goodness, like I need to learn all this stuff. There's probably just like those 6 things and just learning how to rinse and repeat those systems. But I'm around. I think my LinkedIn was there. So oh yeah, Andrew, boring is the key to quality architecture. It's true, but you will never see a social media post that says that because that doesn't sell. So
Slow is
that's kind of
smooth,
like
smooth is fast.
yeah, exactly. So if you ever have questions or want to talk more about this type of stuff, just like reach me on Slack or on LinkedIn. I'm usually more responsive on LinkedIn. But yeah, but like good luck building stuff. Just like don't get FOMO. That's the thing I've been telling a lot of people. It's like don't get FOMO. Just like stay focused, eye on the prize, and then you'll build your $1 million million user applications. So keep it up.
And I think Brian probably deserves some royalties from that today. So if you build anything based off of him inspiring you today, just be sure to throw him some a founder's fee. I want to thank
Thanks,
everyone.
Corey.
I want to thank Brian. The recording again will be available either later today or early tomorrow. We'll have a good rest of your day, good evening, good night, whatever it is. We'll see you next time. Bye bye, everyone.